Hi everyone, I'm just checking in with you. I have been really impressed by the networking going on in the discussion and the strategies that you're sharing with each other. And I am very impressed with chapter one review that Allison had completed, and also chapter three on text complexity that Marcy completed. If you go to Google Drive, you can leave your comments and share the discussion. One is on preparing students for the 21st century, which would be chapter one, and the other Google Drive is for discussion on text complexity. So you can discuss that on your on your Flipgrid. Sorry, wrong one. Mini lessons are also on Flipgrid, and Allison performed or demonstrated an excellent strategy for those readers that constantly repeat the same word incorrectly. And it's a strategy that you can use with primary, elementary, but you can also use with adult learners who are struggling, because we assume that kids know how to visualize setting, visualize characters, visualize everything, but they don't sometimes visualize letters or words. The same thing with math. This can actually transition into math. Are they actually visualizing? I know that they're doing a lot of mental math now as a result of the new emphasis on visual literacy. So I want to talk a little bit about Allison's chapter one because she demonstrated something that was in the PowerPoint. Remember, in the PowerPoint, we said that there are three things that you have to remember with literacy: pre, during, and post, whether it's pre reading, pre writing, whether it's pre visualizing, pre listening, pre participating in an activity. There are strategies that you need to do to prepare students and give them the foundational knowledge, prior knowledge, give them information so that they can actually learn. It opens up those doors of cognitive learning. So she did that, and I hope you saw her video, but she started by making a connection, chapter one, the beginning of chapter one, a connection to what happened in Thailand with the soccer team in the cave. And of course, that was engaging. So you start listening, and then she went right into the 21st century learning. And also, she brought up the idea of multimodal instruction, because that was addressed in here. I will talk about multimodal instruction because it's kind of a buzzword right now. And it's something that it's a way for students to demonstrate learning without having to write the 5 paragraph essay. When I attended the reading a reading conference in Lexington not too long ago, there was a lot of multimodal demonstrations where students are actually learning, but sometimes putting it down in writing is not as engaging. It doesn't mean they can't write, but if they can do a digital format, or if they can design something or draw something, paint something, sculpt something, if they can do another way of demonstrating that they actually understand what that book is and actually analyze it. There was a teacher there for AP English, and she was actually having them do analysis through it was story webs, and then they took part of the story web and analyzed it. But it was wonderful. So she talked about that, and then there were some other things that she addressed. One of them was she emphasized the different areas that we need to look at literacy. The reading, the writing, the speaking, and listening are all part of the literacy strategies, and all part of literacy nuances that we need to be in touch with and get our students in touch with. Sometimes we don't do enough speaking and listening. And do we ever combine them, really? I know that we do, but are we deliberately doing it? And you know teachers that are not doing that. So I know that our core standards emphasizes the literacy strand, the literacy standards for all content areas. We need to remember that those are content areas: literacy in math, literacy in social studies, modern languages, art, music, everything that is within the school academic day should have literacy strategies embedded so that kids actually learn. I enjoyed my English 445, and I'm going to make this brief, but my English 445 class is a teaching, reading, writing course for future teachers. It's generally English teachers, but I had 20 ag students in there this time. And I learned so much listening to them explain their content and using pre, during, and post strategies. And they did it very effectively. I was really excited, like welding. I never even thought about having pre welding activities to get kids engaged in it, but they did an extremely good job. But anyway, kudos to Allison for including that. I also like this emphasis on text complexity, and I think I have, let me see down here. When we go to text complexity, we know, and if I can see my little triangle here, we know that when determining the text complexity of any text, whether it is math, science, and I have actually taught teachers how to plug their text into Legstyle.com, because you can plug any. I use it for newspapers, I use it for magazines and journals to find out what the quantitative data is. You see, we have three areas here. We have qualitative data we have to be considered or concerned about. We also have quantitative measures, and we have reader and task. Of course, your quantitative is your Lexile. It determines like the length of the sentence. And I think I have an example here from music, maybe. Maybe not. But anyway, you can plug any content in there. It will give you a quantitative data, a number. And when you look at that quantitative data, you can look at, they have a chart. And in this chart, you can see what grade level they might be reading at or what grade level they might need. You can see how, because of the expectations increasing and the rigor increasing, the Lexile ranges have actually increased. So you might find some of the texts that were once read in high school now being read in 5th through 8th grade. So we have to take that into consideration. So anyway, looking at those three areas, for instance, I was working with music teachers. That's why I thought I had a music example in here. And I introduced them to the Smithsonian library that they have of songs and history that tell the history of the United States through songs. And a lot of those were elementary teachers, and they were planning on using those songs. Students know those songs all the time. Well, perhaps they sing them because the music goes with them, but number one, did they understand the vocabulary? Quite frankly, I would not include "I've been working on the railroad," because if they ever found out what the true meaning of Dinah blowing her horn was, it was totally inappropriate for elementary students. So they need to look at what the text is actually saying. And then you look at that qualitative data. Is there anything that might be challenging for students as far as they don't have prior knowledge? They don't have any foundational knowledge that will help them understand that. And also reader and task considerations. Is the issues or the plot too difficult for that age level? So there are three areas that we need to consider. And I even consider it with my freshmen. I try to start out the semester a little bit different than when I end it, because I need to know these Lexile levels, the readability of my students. So anyway, there's, for instance, and here's an example, and you probably have seen this, To Kill a Mockingbird is only at 870. Well, if you look at 870 here, we're talking about 5th grade reading level. But would you teach To Kill a Mockingbird in 5th grade? Absolutely not, because of the qualitative and reader and task data. So that's just a little bit about text complexity. I don't think that it should go away. I don't think we should ignore it. It's going to be there. I have already looked at the new standards or the tentative standards, because you know they're being revised in the state of Kentucky, and they're very similar. They really haven't changed a few words maybe, so it's not going away. The things are pretty much similar. So let's get out of that. Okay, another strategy when we talk about text complexity in other content areas or even your content, how do we know for sure that students are actually grasping or being able to read the text The text is somewhat, especially by high school, they're pretty fat, but they're filled with pictures at elementary. This is something that Amy Goodman used in Alaska. Amy Goodman used to be our Secretary of Education at one point, and then Alaska hired her to bring their scores up. And she had this, every school in Alaska used this drawing. It was glued into their writer's notebook. And at the beginning of every unit, the students had to do 1 through 6. 1 through 6, just to get their nose into that unit or into the content, which is important. Another one that is found, let me see, in, and I know that I downloaded it, but my computer, here, strategies for activating prior knowledge. This is all in your Google Drive folder, by the way, but you'll find that there are strategies in here. This is all for gaining prior knowledge. So one of you mentioned Think, Pair, Share, which we should be using it, but when I go and observe teachers, sometimes there's nothing. There are no pre-activities sometimes, which I think is unfortunate because every student is at a different rate. I think in here is where you find thieves. Yeah, right here. Thieves. This is another strategy for previewing textbooks or any kind of text, and it tells you what to do. It's just an acronym, but I found that to be pretty effective too. So, and then here's a kinesthetic thieves if you want to work with younger students and get them jump around the room a little bit. So this is filled with, and then I also have picture books that you might use with older students. I love to use Fly Away Home. I actually got this idea from Holly Bloodworth, but I love to read Fly Away Home. And it's simply a book that tells a story about a father and son that are homeless and they live in an airport. Eve Bunting, I think, is the author of it, and I have used it to spark debate over whether social services should get involved with that family or not. So anyway, the debate's for older students, but it was a children's book that spurred the debate. So I also have a list of books here that you might be interested in. So make sure that you look at what we have on our Google Plus, other options for you. Text complexity, and some of you are doing a great job of responding to it. If you haven't, make sure you look at the mini lessons and respond to those as well as the lessons that are being presented. And I'll be back with you again tomorrow. So I really appreciate everybody being here. We have people from Mason County High School, Lexington area, Hopkinsville. We have somebody here from Murray State, or two people here from Murray State, actually. So we have representation from across the state. So we want to know what you all are doing. And you can upload into that Google Drive folder also. And then if you want to share it with your teachers, feel free to do that. So I'll talk to you later. Have a great hot evening, except for this room. This room is freezing. This is my office. It's usually at a pleasant 64, and I have to bundle up a little. Have a great evening.